Today I will tell you about simplicity. First, what is simple? Then some ideas and principles and tools and code at the end. When I ask people, do they like simple code or simple tool? Everyone agrees. But they go back to writing complicated code and to use complicated tools. So let's start from the beginning. People often confuse simple and easy. And there are different things. Let's start with simple. Simple means one thing, one responsibility. In Polish, we have this word proste. That means something like straight. One straight way of doing something. And the word easy means familiar. Something we know. Something we have learned. The opposites are very interesting. The opposite of simple is complex, like many components connected to each other. And the opposite of easy is hard, whatever we're unfamiliar with. If we put it all in one table, we got like 4 options, 4 different things or categories. And the first one is things that are simple and easy. We all like it. And for me, an example can be function. We pass arguments, we get some result, simple, easy. The opposite, things that are complex and hard. It can be something like quantum physics, writing AI, or 3D graphics. It's complex and hard. There are also things that are complex, but really easy. And I want to give you an example from our community. Writing boilerplates, or using those. It's really easy to clone a repo, or use Yeoman, but you get all these files, you have no idea how they work. And if anything goes wrong, you have no idea how to fix it. So don't use them. If you want to use something, configure it yourself. So that was complex and easy. And the last one, things that are simple but hard. Remember, hard is not about like some abstract thing. It's things that are not familiar to us. And it's dependent on what you know. For me, it's some aspect of functional programming. I believe it is simple because there are like functions everywhere only. But it gets harder. So we get these 2 columns. And I believe you can see why people confuse them. Both of them can be easy and hard. So I want to give you the principle I'm using to decide what's simple, or to decide how to avoid complexity. And it's really simple. Avoid magic. That's the simplest rule I can give you. Now some examples. Google Web Toolkit. Who knows it? Some of you. So for the rest of you, it's this idea that magically you can hide the browser, JavaScript, and CSS, and you can write everything in Java. Yeah. And there's a lot of magic. And it killed a lot of projects before Google killed it. A newer example is something called Zone.js. I hope there are no fans of it here. And it wants to solve a really important problem of asynchronous errors. What they introduce is these global threads and hijacking every asynchronous browser function. And I don't want to debug, set timeout in a browser because they've broken something. And there's this worst kind of magic, one with obscure spells. Let's say you join a new company, you clone a project, and you want to fix something, but it doesn't work. You ask around, okay, you have to set this environment variable, one obscure spell. Okay, I can do that. But then you have to set this proxy, and this server, and this something. A lot of complexity, and it's easy because we're familiar with it. And people know these obscure spells and think that's okay. Another example is DI frameworks. Dependency injection is great, but frameworks, not so much. And often they introduce a lot of magic. That's from Angular. The first time I get that, it was like 2 hours wasted. First, to click those links and still have no idea what happened. And then check all my changes to see what really get broken during the build. So please remember, magic has costs. Let's look at it from another perspective. There's this great idea of innovation tokens. I first read about it in a blog post called Choose Boring Technology by Dan McKinley. And I believe we get 1 innovation token per project. So we can spend that token to make user experience better, or to solve some technical problem, or you can introduce React or Angular for the first time. And people do the latter too easily, in my opinion. One reason is probably to add new framework to the ACV, you know, CVDD, CV-driven development. Another is probably that if you spend 6 months on your free time learning this new shiny framework, then you want to use it everywhere. It even has a name. You probably know it. If the only tool you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And if the only tool you have is reactive hammer, everything looks like a stream, or Angular directive, or React component. And I see a lot these framework developers, even jobs like that, Angular, React developer. It drives me crazy. We shouldn't do that. We should just look for great developers. And I want to tell you about an outlier here. This company is looking for best engineers. And then they let them learn Erlang. Erlang is basically like Java, but older. And he's from a company called WhatsApp. And they have 900 million monthly active users with 50 engineers. That's remarkable. I worked for so many companies without anything comparable. So if they can do that, so can you. Who knows what JavaScript fatigue means? One person. So there was this blog post some time ago about too many tools and so on. Please read it. It's a little too long for me to explain right now. But Anders Stahl is he's a creator of Cycle.js. And his tweet is really great. I believe he's right. So the advice I can give you is to learn new things, learn new frameworks. Don't only pick React and learn everything React. Maybe your next project will be better with Angular or Vanilla.js. You should learn that too. There's this great analogy that programmer is a little like a surgeon, or maybe should be. If you go to see a surgeon, you don't expect him to start cutting you with chainsaw boilerplates. That would be silly. You expect him to run some checks, test your blood, I don't know, get an X-ray, so that he's going to cure you, not hurt you, not make things worse. There's this idea of self-contained systems that can help you with that. Let's say we have online shop, one big application. It can be divided into two separate systems. One for back office, when you put new things to sell, and the public-facing part. And people often choose Angular, for example, for the back office, and just use Angular for the other part, without considering the costs. The public-facing part should probably work everywhere, without any frameworks. With these single-page applications everywhere, I believe we've forgotten one of the best ideas we had. It was called progressive enhancement. Who knows about it? Who's using it? Less hands. So I want us all to be more like surgeons. So we use best tools for the job and not introduce problems. Okay. Third part. Tools and code that I use. It will be quick, but 6 points. First, I will tell you why I use editors, then a little about code style, a little about builds, libraries, this keyword in JavaScript, and DI frameworks, or dependency injection, maybe. Okay. I use editor. Right now, it's like Sublime or Atom, but it wasn't always like that. When I started, I was using IDE like everyone else. I was really happy with that. But at some point, I had to use VI and SSH to fix something on production. And I realized that I can't code, that I'm addicted to this IDE. Without control space, I can't really write code without 100 typos. So I took a step back and made this decision to use simpler tools, to be closer to code. There's this great series of books, Learn C, Learn Python, Learn Ruby the hard way. One of the first chapters is that you should learn with editor, not IDE, so that you're forced to learn the language or the framework, not the tool. And the IDEs hide a lot. They make things easier. But it has costs. Even for senior developers. There's this great competition called Code in the Dark. And the rules are really simple. You get a screenshot, this crappy online editor, and you have to recreate the page without previews. How many of you can do that? I challenge you to try it. So I believe we can use simpler tools. And editors don't hide complexity from you. And I think that's a good thing. There's this new standard called JavaScript standard code style. It's the second point. I know what you're thinking. We already have JS hint, JS lint, and a lot of others. But I really like this one because it just works. And you can disagree with some of the points there. Like, I don't really like that I can't have 2 empty lines. That's annoying. But I can sacrifice that for when I want to work on something on GitHub or switch job. There will be the same standard. I think Go community done it really well, or Python. They have one standard. So that's the logo. I hope if we all give it a try and maybe like it, then it will be a standard. Check it out. Third, I want to tell you a story. Some time ago, I had to introduce one of the backend developers to our front-end build. At first, it was great. Please install Node.js. OK, sounds good. Then this npm install to install all dependencies. And then install this global gulp, global, webpack, grunt, and he asked me why. I just typed npm install. And I realized that he shouldn't. That this is one of those obscure spells. It should be just npm install. There's even talk today about it, so I hope you will all go. So right now, most of our projects work just that. npm install, npm start, it just works. And we realized we don't really need gulp or grunt. Try it. Fourth. Self-contained systems. That sounded like a good idea, but it also introduced a problem. We have a lot of tools for managing libraries in a project, like Webpack, for example. But if we have 5 different systems and all of them use the same libraries, then we're going to have a problem. Our user has to download the same libraries over and over again. And instead of building another tool that will join all of the builds and so on, there is a really simple solution. Script tags. You can create your own CDN or use CDN.js. And with HTTP 2.0 just around the corner, there's no real cost to that. Why don't we use script tags? Simple, just works. It's easy. Right now, I'm a fan of using less of this keyword. But I wasn't always like that. Even 2 years ago, I was writing classes and using a lot of this. But I was watching one of the workshops by Kali Simpson. That's the author of You Don't Know JS books. Of course, if you can, read them. They are great. And the thing about this, it introduced a lot of complexity. And I realized that I don't really need that complexity. The only thing that I really need is using functions. I told you about dependency injection frameworks. And the thing is, you don't need a framework to do that. It's really simple. The only thing you need, you already have. It's called arguments. You can pass every dependency you have as an argument to a function. And even like 2 weeks ago, in Node.js, I had this config, and it had to change from being synchronous and loaded from file to asynchronous and loaded from console. And it was 4 lines that changed. I just get the promise and started the application after the promise was resolved. I don't want to think about framework that would work with synchronous and asynchronous dependencies in that way. How much complexity would that be? And it was only 4 lines. You can do that. So, the most important ideas I want you all to remember. First, avoid magic, especially the one with obscure spells. Learn new things so that you have a lot of tools in your toolbox. And be more like a surgeon. Do what's best for the project and not your CV. Thank you very much.